in putting this together. And then, of course, our program advisors who have been indispensable throughout this process. And then one more thing, if everybody could please follow the GSA Code of Conduct, which will be posted in the chat shortly. So be respectful. If you're not respectful, you'll be asked to leave. And then beyond that, if you have any questions for the panelists throughout this, throughout the hour, please post them in the chat, and then we will moderate them. We'll feed them to our panelists. And then also, if you need a live captioning, in the upper left corner of your Zoom screen, you should see live on Otter AI. So just click that link, and you should be able to see the transcript as it happens. So thank you so much. All right, so let's introduce our panelists who will just give a little bit of background on themselves. So let's start with Dr. Rohini Singh.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. I'm Rohini, and I'm currently a life science consultant with Clareview Healthcare Partners in Boston in the US. Clareview is a life sciences strategy firm, and we work with a variety of clients, both small, mid, and large pharma. Prior to moving to Clareview, I was a PhD student at University of Pennsylvania, with a focus in ecology and evolution. And in fact, I defended last fall. I actually took a bit of a break between my defense and starting a job about a few months. But talking about my journey into consulting, I was interested and looking for jobs or opportunities that were more fast-paced, that were very diverse, and also had team aspect to it. And I think consulting fits that criteria to the bullet, and I'm glad that I started here.
Thank you, Rohini. And Dr. Jason, can you come next?
Sure. So my name is Jason Brunton. I work at a boutique, pretty niche life science consulting firm called Adivo Associates. It is mostly pharmaceuticals, but also we work a little bit in med devices and diagnostics and some other early disease model development things. Kind of work a little bit all over the place with that. But overall, I'd say it's about 90% pharmaceuticals. And the type of work we do is, I would say, pretty similar to most other life science consulting firms. We have a pretty big focus on, trying to drive growth strategy, trying to help figure out early stage development of products. And we also do a lot of work for inline products. So we do a lot of, performance tracking, lifecycle management, all sorts of things like that. We tend to be, when I say niche, we tend to focus in fewer therapeutic areas, but with the goal of having, more knowledge and more expertise. So that's a way that we try and, say, push our value and kind of stand out from other small consultancies. So I've been there for probably about 4 years now. I'm a senior consultant, and hopefully that will change in a couple of weeks to be principal. I run our immunology franchise internally, which is our fastest growing franchise. So it's been pretty exciting and a pretty busy time the past couple of years, but it's all been, it's all been very good things. Before that, I actually used to work for Clareview Healthcare Partners. I was there a little bit as a consultant. So I was in Boston as well. So Rohini is in my old stomping grounds. And honestly, the type of work they do there is very similar and actually pretty complementary to the work that I do here. So my experience there has been actually pretty helpful. I've never really been a generalist type of consultant. It's always been life sciences and pharma. So that's kind of been my focus. My background before that, I was a PhD at University of North Carolina in Chapel Hill, and that was in microbiology and immunology. So I studied the molecular mechanisms of host pathogen interactions, and that went in a lot of different ways. I was more of a bacteriologist. I had more collaborators that were better than me at immunology and cell biology, but I think together we made some pretty interesting work. studies on how host metabolism affects growth of pathogens and things like that. So it was pretty fun work overall. Why I decided to transition away from that world and into consulting, I knew that I didn't want to be in the academic world long term, but I didn't know anything after that. And for a while I just wasn't sure what I really wanted to do. And honestly, somebody gave me a piece of advice that was just like, well, start looking at every job application, and listing you can find, and then, find the ones that just seem most interesting to you and just circle those and then see what that looks like. I mean, that seems like a very obvious piece of advice, but then when someone told me that and I started good, all of the job descriptions that I liked the most were all consulting jobs. And I was like, okay, now this makes sense. This is now a direction for me to go. And so I just started going down that road of, doing all the standard prep. I'm sure we'll get into a lot more of that later, but yeah, that's pretty much been my journey.
Thanks so much.
Mhm.
And Dr. Megan?
There, I'm Megan Waldman. I currently own my own business, a consulting firm. So it's called M. Waldman LLC, not very creative, but it gets the job done. So what I do is I am largely on, I serve as a scientific communicator and a scientific, almost like a liaison. So I help their CEO, their clinical team, or their research teams, as well as their marketing teams align, as well as help them understand the marketing position that they're currently in and where they want to go and how to help them get there. So it's been a lot of fun. And before this, I was doing a lot of tech transfer work. I did some management consulting in a small life sciences company where I worked with investors as well as big pharma, and that, working in that arena really exposed me to a lot of entrepreneurs, and I think that gave me the entrepreneurial bug. So I've been doing this independently for about 2 years now and absolutely love it. For my journey, it really started in grad school. I started working, so my PhD is in human genetics from the University of Pittsburgh. And while I was working on the bench, I realized that similar to Jason, I did not want to take the academic path. I didn't really know what direction to go in. And similar advice came to me where I was like, just start looking at pretty much everything, that can get a little overwhelming. So I found the tech transfer side of things within the university, started working on those teams and working with the entrepreneurs within the universities to coach them through how you take an idea from the bench to bedside or to market. And then after exiting grad school, I love that. It was so fun. It opened up my eyes to all of the different paths that you could take. So from there, I joined the small life sciences consulting firm. And then here I am today. So my piece of advice would be to get just start exploring some different avenues, don't talk to your normal bubble, get out there and talk to some other people.
Thanks so much. And then can you dive right into our first question? So consulting seems like a broad topic. What does consulting entail? What types of consulting are out there?
Sure. So I think the most classical example of consulting, particularly within the life sciences, is what Jason and Rohini and I have all dabbled in, which is more of this commercial side. You're looking at how to help companies, life sciences companies grow. That can vary from big pharma to early stage startup companies. It can also be very product specific or for the entirety of a business. So that's the commercial side. The other types of consulting are scientific consulting, where you'll have a company who says, hey, we're looking to develop this product. We don't really have the bandwidth in-house to identify if this is a viable idea or if there's even any room for this in the market. Can you do some like basically a literature review, as well as a market assessment of all the evidence to help them decide if their ideas are viable or if they should prioritize a certain area of their profile. But again, that's more commercial. There's also regulatory consulting you can do. There's marketing consulting. More and more life sciences companies are hiring or looking for PhDs on their marketing teams because they understand the science quick and can help translate it. So yeah, it's pretty much, there's a variety. If you were to look at a company, a life sciences company, and look at all of the different divisions, honestly, there's probably some sort of consulting that is either already involved there or it's going to emerge where PhDs would be valued.
Thanks. And Jason or Rohini, do you have anything to add to that?
I mean, I think she nailed the main points, right? The vast majority, and I think the most common ones, like she said, are going to be in the commercial teams. And then, like she was saying, a lot of the things that tend to branch out from there tend to also be sort of an adjacency to that commercial need. Probably things that she probably knows better than I do are, the messaging parts, right? And so the communication. So, that's going to lead into, the medical and clinical teams a little bit more, sometimes into the sales force. You can do a little bit more, direct. I mean, this still leads into commercial, but it's a little bit into sales, Salesforce optimization studies. I've been a part of those. I've been a part in, message testing and message development, for the communications aspect of it. And then again, this is still commercial development, portfolio, planning out the portfolio, whether it's, late term, midterm, early term, helping even kind of develop early stage businesses get off the ground. If you work with investors, it's the same type of thing, right? Like, how to help get this company started. Are we targeting the right unmet needs? Is this something that's going to be valuable down the pipeline 10, 15 years down the road? But yeah, a lot of it, when you really start to boil it down, a lot of it does fall back into that. But that's mostly the focus. And then to take one bigger step back from there is going to be the generalist firms, right? If you think of the McKinseys, the Bains, the BCGs, and then like the finance, the more maybe finance focused ones, the Accenture, the Deloittes, they still do a lot of work in biosciences and stuff like that. But their focus is a bit all over the place, and PhDs in life science can go into those. Those tend to be what people think of the top of the top and sort of the hardest companies to get into. But there, yeah, you're going to be doing a lot of the same types of things, like determining all the things we talked about for pharmaceuticals, but just for something else, and that just might be tires or makeup or oil and gas, right? It's going to be a lot of the same things. Sorry, one other thing that I've done recently was it worth investing in in another manufacturing plant for a certain thing? So that's, again, is there a commercial opportunity there, and does it make sense financially to build that plant? Will that provide enough supply for market share and blah 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 blah. So it at the end of the day, everything tends to boil back on, is this going to help the business? Is this going to help the business make money?
Thanks so much.
Mhm.
And then, so I guess our next question for Jason is, how do consultancy agencies work?
Yes, so I suppose it's kind of a broad question. I suppose I can hit on a top line in a couple different ways. One is, really just at the end of the day, it's a professional services firm, right? So you basically just are asked to solve a very specific and particular question. A lot of times that question is specific. A lot of the times the question is relatively amorphous, but it's really just that. And there's a specific problem that you sort of define with the client, and then you boil down a approach to break down what the problem is, address the different parts of the problem, do some research to get your answers, put it together, and then present your findings, right? That's basically sort of the high level view of that. Who you do that for, like I said, it's going to depend based on, what your firm does. But at the end of the day, it's usually, if you're thinking of life sciences, it's usually manufacturers of pharmaceuticals or medical devices, or investors are another big one that need to think about this type of stuff. And yeah, you really just, bid for projects, bid for contracts, and, you develop relationships with the clients, and, hopefully try to build in regular stream of contracts and project work if you're a good consultancy, and then, build off from there. So that's sort of what it looks like, top line business. But in terms of like a day-to-day person's job, like say if you're coming as a consultant, you're going to work, really on those projects, and you're going to be doing the research for that. You're going to be building the ideas and trying to figure out what the answers are, and then building the reports, presenting your outputs. As you move up in the firm, you tend to get more on the business development side, client communication side, trying to find ways to grow the business, and also do general management within the company. So that would be my sort of high level general answer to that question.
And Rohini and Megan, do you have anything to add to that? To like how a consulting agency works?
No, I think Jason gave like a very good overview of like what broadly happens across like multiple consulting firms, with like how questions are tackled and how they come in.
Thanks. And then Rohini, next question's for you. What does a typical entry-level position look like?
Yeah, I'm happy to talk about that. So like Jason mentioned, it's pretty much very similar to what like consulting firms are doing, which is around problem solving. So as a PhD or as a postdoc, you pretty much start as a consultant at the company. And for the first initial few months, the work is very similar to other starting positions, be it at an undergrad level or at a master's level. But that quickly diverges as you gain experience, where in addition to like working on the project, looking up information, synthesizing both scientific and business insights for a problem that a client may have, it also adds an additional layer of management and navigating like team dynamics with the team member and the leadership members as well. So for example, I can speak for like my experience as of now. It's still a fresh and a new sort of like an entry level role as it's been described in the question. And my role largely entails in synthesizing both scientific aspect of a question that a client is looking at, and even synthesizing the commercial and business aspects of it. So spending a majority of my time trying to look up for that information and analyzing it to best suit the client's need. But moving forward, I imagine that my role will also add additional team management roles, and that takes a while to add for a consultant. Yep.
Thank you. And Jason and Megan, do you have anything to add to that? Okay.
Depends on also how big your consulting firm is. So the one that I initially got into, I wore a few different hats. It was a super small team, and similar entry, major entry roles that Rohini described, but at the same time, I was involved in a lot of the, like even the marketing tasks, the administrative, just like things like that aren't like particularly, they weren't an overwhelming portion of my job, but it did help, at least in the sense of being independent now, it did help with that, but also gave me more clarity for like how every single job within the consulting firm worked, which was kind of cool.
Thanks so much. And then what kind of skills do you need to be in a consulting job? Like, what are some of the relevant skills maybe that you took from your PhD, or just new skills that you had to acquire before the transition or during the transition?
Is that for me?
Oh, sorry, it's for anybody. Sorry.
I'd say the biggest thing is communication. you got to be able to communicate with your clients, with your team, with your higher ups, with the people who, pretty much everybody. And it's a very different way of communicating compared to what you're used to in the lab, or at least it was for me. Even sending simple emails to clients was, you just have a different sense of, is this going to get the exact answer that I need? You kind of want to get to the point quickly, as well as forming really strong relationships. So that just takes practice.
I see.
Yeah, I couldn't help but second that. Specificity, clarity, simplicity of communication is absolutely essential in this job, because it's very, and everything's very general and amorphous. So the more you can focus your messaging on, being specific, trying to get the actual problem done, trying to unravel it, or, unravel or define anything that's sort of unclear, quickly being able to do that is going to be, it's going to get you significantly farther, significantly faster. And that was a big change, I think, for me too in the lab, was that. But it's actually, it's a hard job, in the sense that, yes, you have to be a fantastic communicator, and I couldn't agree more. That's like the number one thing. You also have to be a great analyst, and you also have to be quick on your feet, and you also have to, think through all these things. Like, generally, my experience is, when I see people come in, they tend to be good at, they're a great analyst, and they think through ways to solve problems and understand research, or they're a great communicator, and they're great at trying to find ways to, clearly and quickly able to ask questions, answer things, figure things out. But usually everybody has to grow the other part. They have to grow their analyst part, or they have to grow their communication part. And I see both people come in, and I see both types of people do well. But it's a hard job, because you have to be good at all of these things all at the same time. But it obviously really is really helpful to just grow your career path, whether you stay in consulting or whether you go somewhere else. I see, my biased opinion is that I think it's one of the best ways to do that, is to come in through this industry.
I think also on to your point, Jason, with the being a really strong analyst, it's definitely a transition. I mean, you're not you specifically, but I think coming from a scientific background, we're all being trained to be hyper analytical, but it's definitely a different landscape of what you're analyzing, and there's also an added portion or factor of economics and practicality, I would say, like human behavior, which is hard to account for, but it is something that you have to just to think about. So to put this in perspective for how you can actually grow this skill now is by really trying to understand the different aspects of how decisions are made within a company. I think even there's some consulting firms. I know McKinsey does this, but there I'm sure are others within that who are more specific to the life sciences that have these workbooks that give you problems that are scenarios that they would work through with their clients. And so it kind of helps you map out okay, what are the different factors that are involved within an analysis for consulting versus, right now you can probably be what are the different factors whenever I'm about to manipulate this cell, look at all the different pathways, I need these different nutrients, I need temperature control. It's the same kind of process, but it's hard to become a good analyst if you don't understand all of those different factors. So yeah, understanding that landscape, I think, will help grow those skills.
Thanks, Megan. And yet, expanding on that a little bit, can you talk a little bit more about how your graduate education experiences, you use that in consulting?
So it's been a few years, but I will try and tap back into those memories. So I would say it's exactly what I and Jason just touched on, which is the you're instantly an analyst. You're naturally going to be able to critique things. So that's really helpful. It's just a matter of pivoting what you're looking at. And the multitasking, I would say, working in a lab environment is, especially if you're owning your own, if you have a lot of ownership over your projects or juggling multiple projects, that's directly translatable to consulting. Being really resource oriented, I would say, is really helpful as well. So collaborating between groups, super helpful. If you look at anything that you do in your day to day, there's a good chance that it's probably transferable. It's just a matter of identifying, really thinking through how, and that helps you in interviews as well. I think that's like a big portion. I think a lot of PhDs there, like I only have training or experience in the sciences and working on a bench. How am I supposed to go into this interview and be like, hey, I have experience? But the fact is that the job that you're interviewing, they're well aware that you don't have a consulting experience. But you can always set, your skills that you're learning. You're a quick learner. You're a good thinker. You can translate those soft skills to the management and consulting side too, or not management consulting, but just consulting side.
Thanks. Yeah, Jason, I saw you unmute. Do you have something to add?
Oh no, I mean,
okay.
I was really just going to say that. Yeah, I couldn't agree with that more. The pivoting is a big thing. It's digging into the information, digging into the idea, but in a slightly different way. And like she said, no one comes into a consulting job having all the experience of working in a consulting job. Like everyone's wholly aware of that. It's how quick are you able to pick things up, or do you have just a general sense of the way things work, and are you driven and motivated to do it? That's pretty much what they look for.
Thanks. And then moving, so Rohini, can you tell us a little bit about one question we have is, how can I better prepare for the transition from research in academia to consulting?
Yeah, happy to talk about it. And so like Megan and Jason mentioned, that those skills that are required for a consulting job are already there and are something that we all have worked through over our PhD, with regards to how to analyze and interpret the data, how to condense it, how to communicate it both orally and in a written format, which is succinct and effective. But I think what gets lost in that is setting those skills up when interviewing or when applying for these certain jobs, that the basic skills that are required for this kind of a job is already there with a lot of experience. So I guess figuring out a way, either working with the career services or even just discussing with your friends or somebody who has gone through the process, to help how to elevate the skills that you already have. I don't think that requires an additional skill that is not covered during the course of your PhD. And once you start on the job, there is so much learning as you go that there is never a great fit. So you are in some sense hitting the skill requirements that are needed for the job, but there's still so much learning that happens. And I think that is given for anybody who's joining the firm. It's given that you will learn a lot more on the job itself. As long as you can sell that, or you can present yourself as a candidate that is quick to learn, quick to jump back on its feet, good with analysis of data, and not just with the depth of the data, but also the breadth of the data that needs to be analyzed in order to present a comment or a conclusion for the client, would be important.
Thanks so much. Jason or Megan, do you have anything to add to that? We can go on to, so this is a question for Rohini as well, or anyone can jump in. When along your journey did you decide that you wanted to pursue an alternate career path away from academia?
Yeah, so I actually I'm not sure how many students are in the same position as I am, but when I started my PhD, I had a sense that I did not want to open a lab of my own. I did not want to pursue a postdoc, but was more likely using a PhD, A, as a way to buy myself some time, and B, to also figure out what my skills are and where I can find like a place to apply them. And I think I just started my PhD with the idea that I really liked doing research and I really enjoyed teaching. My decision to pivot towards consulting was actually in the later half of my PhD, more towards my 4th year. And I think that was just upon a chance accident when I was trying to figure out what kind of work environment. I think over the course of my PhD, I realized what was missing in my work environment, which was a lot of teamwork, a lot of constant feedback, and a much faster paced environment, which I really like working in. So that became evident over with my research experience itself. And somewhere towards my 4th year, I got the opportunity to work with a student consulting group. And that's when I decided that that is probably where I want to pursue a move next. So yeah, briefly, I think I knew I just did not want to continue with academia once I started my PhD, but I just wasn't sure where I wanted to head out after my PhD. So I used my time during PhD and the student groups that were on campus to get to know more about the professional groups that are there. And like Megan had mentioned earlier, like stepping out of your own bubble to know what's out there and to figure out what fits you.
Thanks so much. And yeah, Jason and Megan, do you have any other insights? Like when did you guys realize that you, or I mean, I guess Jason touched on it. Megan, did you have any more background on that?
No, I mean, I started in grad school. That's whenever I realized that I didn't. I was really, and still am very curious about several different types of science and technology, more so than my specific project that I was working on. So, so I think that's kind of what drove me in my initial direction to kind of explore other things. Other than not necessarily wanting to be a bench scientist. Yeah.
And then, yeah, to follow up on that, there was a question like, how can someone build a career as an independent consultant in the industry?
Yeah, so there's not a direct answer to that. I think everybody that I've talked to who has a similar role as I do, we've all taken dramatically different paths. And it depends on what you want to do. So some people are independent consultants for specific types of technology, like sequencing technologies, or how to integrate AI into businesses. Right? Those people are hyper experienced. Like they've been in the industry for 20 plus years. They know their stuff. They know the ins and outs of the technology. They know what drives it. They know the key players. They know who's going to, move and shake that industry. So, so that's the long path. For immediately, like a more accelerated path to independent consulting, the routes that are more feasible are doing more of like the marketing consulting side of things, or even like the messaging internal messaging alignment is a much more feasible route to get there quickly. The way that you would have to do that first would be, I don't want to say the way, but my way was to one, get experience understanding business. And so I've taken a few different like certificate courses and things like that, just to get myself better oriented with business jargon. I worked with a lot of investors, and I've been on both sides. So messaging and business consulting within life sciences is heavily dependent on funding, right? Or it's just very financial oriented, right? Everybody's worried, or not worried, but everybody cares about their ROI. Everybody cares about their return on investment. Everybody cares about their bottom line. Is it going to make money or is it not going to make money? How do we determine early if we're going to make money or lose money? And so you need to kind of understand, one, that that's the priority, and two, the different terminology that's used within it. So any way that you can get that knowledge and get that knowledge quickly is the best way, or is a good way. For me personally, I reached out to, like, I just cold contacted some investors, and I said, hey, I'm interested in life sciences investors, and said, hey, I'm interested in what you do. And people are pretty willing to help PhDs or early graduates, or even people who are in a career transition. So that was the first and foremost thing. And then there's a long list of things that you need to do to actually, like, legal things and like paperwork and things like that, to actually establish a business, which, if you're interested in that, then you can contact me directly. I don't necessarily think that's a fitting conversation to have here. But yeah, you're welcome to connect with me on LinkedIn for that type of info.
Thanks. And so, speaking of LinkedIn, Rohini and Jason, how did you network when looking for your job, I guess your first consulting job?
Yeah, that's a good question. For me, I literally knew 0 people at the beginning, right? Like I was starting blank slate. So really it started off with a lot of just, messaging people through LinkedIn or finding people trying to get informational interviews, just trying to figure out, basically what the heck was going on in the industry, what it worked, what it was like. And I'd say I did sort of the same thing when I was looking to transition to a new firm, right? Because I didn't want to move back to North Carolina. I didn't know as many people at the time, so I had to rebuild that network, so to speak. And then honestly, it was just a lot of applying, and actually I got lucky with one of the applications to Clearview's what do they call it? Connected Clearview. That's sort of like intro program. And so I went in there, and it's sort of like a 3-day intro. This is how consulting works type program. I think Bain, McKinsey, and maybe BCG do the same type of a thing. And honestly, that's how I wormed my way into Clearview, actually, is through that program. So yeah, you just sort of talk to people and apply around, and just it's just a standard networking, and build it from scratch, talk to people, try and get to meet people for coffee. And it's a numbers game. I just got off a business development call at my company. It's the same thing. It's a numbers game. It's build your network, come in with the right pitch, the right approach, and just talk to people. And eventually, it doesn't matter how many no's you get. All that matters is that you get one yes, right? And it's just what it is. Most of those contacts are going to come with nothing, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with getting no's. It's just, at the end of the day, all you need is one yes.
I can add to that as well. So I was lucky to be at an institute that had a student-led consulting group, and a pretty established student-led consulting group that was responsible for not only organizing like pro bono work for its students, but also organizing workshops and recruiting meetings with various firms. So figuring out if such groups exist either in your university or even in your city. And I guess given COVID times, everything is pretty much virtual. So like even figuring out in a distant area, can you like join such such groups, either to work or to attend their virtual seminars. And I think that was a great way to have a one-on-one conversation with whoever was coming and having follow-up. And like Jason had mentioned, there are like small workshops, like 3-day or 4-day workshops that a lot of these firms are organizing. And if you apply to those, then that's a good way to get your foot like in the door. I was lucky to get an opportunity to join the Bridge to BCG program about 2 years ago. And I think that was pretty formative in a way to figure out how the firms work, what consulting is about, asking all those questions that you guys are asking now. Like those are pretty much what these workshops are about, and figuring out how to network and get to know these people.
Thank you. We have a question in the chat. So for anybody that wants to lend their experience. So what does a normal day in consulting look like? How much of your time would you say that you dedicate to individual research, report preparation, meetings, interactions with clients, and anything else potentially?
I'm working out. I'm typing.
Oh,
I can actually get us started with this, and I'm sure Megan and Jason can jump in. I feel like the day is a good mix between everything that was written. There's a lot of like meeting times, especially now, I guess, to connect with your team with how the work has to be done. So a team is a cohesive unit that will be working together on a project where each member of the team will handle different aspects of the project. It's generally a good policy to meet frequently to keep touching base with where the work is headed, so that it's cohesive across what the team members are doing, and then there is agreement about what the essential next steps are. I feel with regards to spending time looking up information with respect to just making slides or writing documents, I think it depends on how close a client meeting is or how close the next deliverable is. I feel it starts with a lot of time in establishing a good foundation, a good foundational knowledge about the topic itself. So you spend a lot of time reading through stuff, then you start like synthesizing it either as a written material or as a presentation material, more so like closer to the meetings, especially for the client or even for the team. It's somewhat variable, but there is also like some structure to it.
thank you. So Jason had some answers in the chat, but Megan, do you have any other input on that?
I mean, no, I think she nailed it. I didn't read through Jason's response yet, but yeah, I think it varies pretty significantly from the position that you're in, but it's a good mix. I mean, I have a pretty eclectic schedule, but almost every day there's going to be a few hours dedicated to meetings, whether that's internal or external, client facing, and then a lot of it is prepping reports, but part of prepping reports is the analysis side of things. So yeah, it's a good healthy mix.
Thanks. And jumping in on one of the other questions in the chat about work hours, like what are the typical work hours? What's the work-life balance like?
Well, I think my work-life balance is flexible because I'm a one-woman show, and I kind of just work whenever I am ready to get it done. But it's healthy. I mean, even in the consulting firm, it can be pretty demanding, I would say, but not to the point where you don't have life. For me, it's less time than I was spending in the lab. So, but I think it varies based on this firm that you're with.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think every consulting job is going to be demanding in terms of, the pace and the hours. But yeah, like I would say probably most small firms, you're probably going to still be able to have a life, and it's fine, right? It's definitely not going to be 9 to 5, no matter where you go, but it's also not going to be, 7 a.m. to midnight, 6 days a week either. You know what I mean? It's not going to be like that. You will, your time is going to ebb and flow, right? As projects get, very busy, and, maybe you have to scramble and change things at the last minute. That happens. Whereas other times you might be between projects and able to take a little bit more time off. I will say probably if you work for a larger company and you travel more, like, the standard McKinsey approach, I'm not so sure you can have much of a life there, to be honest, but they do compensate very well. So it just depends on what you go for. So, it's just what it is.
It's a good question to ask firms, I think, whenever you go. When you go to interview, I wouldn't say you should ask, hey, am I going to have a life? You can, it's not, uncommon, I would say, to connect with some of their employees and be like, hey, like, or, go in incognito mode and be like, hey, does it look like they have a life on LinkedIn, or, something like that. Like, but yeah, I think whenever you do some of your informational interviews, note that. And if you guys aren't familiar with an informational interview, that's basically, you reach out to somebody, say, hey, can I learn about your position? And then you ask them a bunch of questions about their position. So yeah, I think it varies, like Jason said, based on the company that you're with.
Yeah. And travel time is another big one that will probably determine that's a factor that will be included sort of in that work-life balance thought. Both firms I've worked at, I've had pretty minimal travel. So that's really helps the work-life balance. Like I said, that's actually one of the reasons why I said McKinsey's probably pretty rough, is because usually they travel every week, right? It's you fly on site every Monday and you fly off site every Friday.
I am curious, sorry, this is a little side note, but with everybody going virtual this past, over a year, I am curious how that will change, or if it will change, because travel for consulting firms, they weren't able to do that, and they obviously needed to make things work. So I'm curious if it will be such a major practice.
Yeah, that's actually a good question. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you at the end.
Yeah, interesting, but anyway.
No, this was something that we talked about in our firm very recently, actually. So I have some thoughts on that. So really, the biggest point of travel is to develop business, maintain relationships, right? So that's sort of again the McKinsey model. You're on site, you're there all the time, you're developing the relationships. Even people like IQVIA and stuff do the same type of a thing. So I'm sure they're going to continue doing that. However, if you're thinking about traveling just for presentations for the sake of that, unless you have some major business development functions, I think that's probably going to be a lot more virtual anyways. So I would probably see things stepping back a little more, just in terms of kind of more routine day-to-day interactions. But I don't think, I think every firm recognizes that face-to-face interactions facilitate business. So I know a lot of that. Well, that's not 100% true, but like I don't see it stepping back a ton because of COVID. It might step back a little, but I'm pretty sure it's like that. Like I'm virtual with 75% of my company anyways, because I'm in the Raleigh-Durham office. There are 4 other major offices that I connect with on a day-to-day basis, sometimes all at the same time, and they are in 4 different time zones, so have Europeans, South Americans, West Coast, and two in Europe, but actually at the same time. So 3 time zones, 4 offices. But then I have collaborators elsewhere in Asia, Middle East, and South America, and Europe, and whatever, right? I don't need to see them. Like it was nice to go visit. I've visited really, but like some of my coworkers I've never met personally. Honestly, their work's just fine virtual and day-to-day work.
Yeah, I'm 100% virtual, but same situation with clients that are kind of all over the globe. So we make it work. Sometimes there's like some wonky meeting hours just because, time zones, but yeah, it is. I mean, I think that in-person meetings are definitely essential. You get more information and new things arise, right?
You just get so much more buy-in too. You know what I mean?
Sure.
You just see, we're just seeing it.
It's a person. You see another person. It's much more compelling. Yeah, I totally get it. Yeah.
Thanks. Well, oh yeah, that's good conversation. Jason, you mentioned a little bit ago the compensation. So we did have a question that potentially, I mean, if you guys have a range at least, what is the average starting pay after PhD, I guess?
Yeah, I think that's going to change a lot based on the firm and it's a lot of it is, based on where you're going to be located and where you live. So, I mean, you're probably going to see things probably in the low end in like the 70s, 80s. And then on the absolute high end, you're probably going to see 150, 180, 200 from like the three. And I mean, realistically, you're probably going to be, I don't know. I don't know. I don't want to say anything, but maybe like, I don't know, probably like 90, 100, something like that would be my guess. It's probably a little higher in Boston and San Francisco and New York, and probably a little lower if you're in, Austin or other places. So, well, Austin's expensive, but maybe that was a better example. But cost of living adjusted, you're probably something like that. That's my guess, but I haven't looked at Glassdoor in a long time, so.
Thanks.
I don't know if the others have more updated information or more accurate information. That's just sort of me pulling numbers out of nowhere.
Yeah, I don't know if either Rohini or Megan wanted to jump in on that, or if that sounds about right.
I think that sounds about right. And like Jason mentioned, Glassdoor is also like a good place, just because the salaries vary depending on your position, on your firm, and on your city. So it's just like a good resource to quickly look through what's out there and how much they'll pay and stuff.
Yeah, for sure. Independence, if people are interested in independent consulting, that's structured a little differently. So you're not on a salary, you're on either an hourly rate or a fixed rate plan. So it can vary based on the type of work that you're doing. I've seen anywhere from $50 an hour to upwards of $400 an hour. So it depends on if you're doing hourly. Fixed rate projects, usually you structure it. It's basically like, hey, one deliverable for this, or you package it in a bundle depending on what you can offer. But yeah, so it scales as much work as you want to do. Your pay scales with that.
Thank you. And I don't think any of our panelists did a postdoc, but we do have some postdocs, and maybe from your colleagues you can speak to experience. Is it necessary to do a postdoc in order to get into consulting? It didn't seem so, but I know if you have any colleagues that did postdocs and said otherwise potentially.
I mean, a lot of the people we've hired at the firm have had postdocs. Was it a requirement to have the postdoc box checked to get the job? No, but do postdocs provide additional opportunity to develop the skills that would be necessary for consulting? Sure, yeah, absolutely. So it's more access to the skills, and right, postdocs then give you a little bit more time to probably work on those skills to make the transition. So I don't think it's, oh, someone's been in academia too long, that's a problem. More like, oh, postdoc's absolutely essential. I don't think it's like that. I think doesn't matter age or background, as long as somebody has the right reasons to come into the job and the right experience and the right ability to do the job. I don't think anything else matters.
And
and to jump off, sorry. I just want to highlight one more point, because I think I realized this when I was doing my this small workshops by companies over the summer. They are marketed as like advanced candidate degree programs, and it may come across that they're only for PhDs, but it's open for both PhDs and postdocs. And so if you're a postdoc and you are considering applying for like such workshops by either McKinsey, Clearview, BCG, Bain, you should absolutely feel free to do it. There's a very good chance that you have the opportunity to network from there and learn from there and see how you fit in the company.
Thank you. Okay, so we are down to our last few minutes here. Do our panelists want to go around and share just like any parting thoughts, pieces of advice to people that are looking to transition into a consulting career?
I would definitely say spend the time to do the prep work. It's a competitive field. There's a lot of applicants. So, spend the time doing your case practices and be good at that. I think every single consultancy is pretty much going to be asking for those. And just, yeah, I would just say that just work on it, do your prep work. You're going to need it. But if you do it, I mean, your odds are good. So.
Oh, just quickly to follow up on that, do you have any suggestions for resources like how to do case practices?
So usually the best place to do that, right, is like some consulting group within the organization. And honestly, when I started looking into this, we didn't have one at our university, but we actually sort of made one. And we just did it that way, just case practice with each other, try and work on it, look into things. So yeah, find a group of people who are also interested in it and just start practicing.
Thanks.
I can add some thoughts to that as well. So I feel like being in like research, all of us have the basic skills that are required for understanding information and processing information. I think what requires is some grooming with how to present this information, especially with case practices, but even like engaging with people while networking or interviewing. Getting involved with like student groups, either at your university or at other universities. Especially most of them are virtual. So you can even hit people up in different universities in a different city and practice virtually over Zoom. So finding and connecting with those clubs is super, super useful. There are, and if there is a student group on your campus, then I think the best practice is to have some kind of experience working with them. For example, on Penn's campus, there was the healthcare consulting group. And I guess the standard expectation was for most consulting firms that if you're coming from Penn, then you should have had at least some prior work with them if you were really interested in consulting groups. So just looking around what's in your area and how you could get involved with those would be helpful.
Thank you. And Megan?
Absolutely, I reiterate those points. Get some experience, just using your mind in a different way. Whether that be with the student consulting groups, whether that be if you have a tech transfer office, or sometimes they're called innovation institutes in your university, get involved. They're always shorthanded, so they might be willing to add you onto a project for some help. Yeah, and just talk more to people. Work those communication skills at every opportunity.
Well, thank you so much. So thank you so much to all of our panelists, and everyone who attended. We have some upcoming workshops. July 14th is our next one on careers in biotech. And that's all. Thank you again to everybody.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks again. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.